Last week, a controversial Middle East leader received an unprecedented White House welcome.
What was the price? Let's dive in. Today, we uncover how $1 trillion bought complete political rehabilitation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into a singular moment in contemporary geopolitics. The November 2025 White House visit by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or, MBS.
And this wasn't just some routine diplomatic meeting, not at all. This was pure, unadulterated, transactional foreign policy theater.
Theater is absolutely the right word, because if you look at the source material, this was MBS's first U.S. visit in 7 years. It was his big return to the global stage after the 2018 assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
And the welcome he got, it was just staggering.
Staggering doesn't even quite capture it. We're talking about a welcome that you'd normally reserve for, like the UK or Canada, the closest of the close.
Right, the longest-standing allies. Not a head of state who, let's be clear, U.S. intelligence, accused of approving the murder of a journalist.
And the fanfare, just to paint the picture for you, it included a full military honor guard, cannons firing a 21-gun salute, horses, a massive red carpet.
And the fighter jets. You can't forget the jets.
The fighter jets. A high-flying formation of F-35s and F-16s streaking right across the sky over Washington, D.C. It was an incredible display of military honor.
And that spectacle, it immediately signaled rehabilitation. That's really what this deep dive is about. We're analyzing the exact terms of that transaction. What did it cost?
Right. What amount of investment, what level of military hardware, and what strategic concessions did it take to buy not just diplomatic acceptance, but effectively immunity for a state-sanctioned murder.
And the whole thing, the entire ethical dilemma, just exploded right there, live, in the Oval Office.
Yes. A reporter, simply doing her job, brought up the Khashoggi murder. She also brought up the very real and raw anger still felt by the 9/11 families.
Interest. And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office.
Who are you with?
Why should Americans trust
Who are you with?
And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
And that was the moment. The mask came off, and you saw the raw calculation laid bare for everyone to see.
The response was shocking. What really stands out in the source material is just how casual, how almost cavalier the whole crime was dismissed.
It wasn't just a denial, it went further. It was an active character assassination of the victim, Jamal Khashoggi.
That's where the language is just so crucial. The president dismissed Khashoggi as extremely controversial.
And then added that chilling detail. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman.
And then came the line that sort of summarized the entire political transaction, the price of admission for MBS. He said, "Things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that."
Right now, as far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Things happen. Just think about that phrase for a second. We're talking about the brutal state-sanctioned murder and dismemberment of a man inside a consulate.
Yeah.
And the response is, things happen. It's such an aggressive minimization of a human rights atrocity happening on the highest possible diplomatic stage.
And you have to remember the context here. This casual dismissal, it directly contradicted the 2021 U.S. intelligence report.
A report from his own government.
Exactly, which found with confidence that MBS, as the crown prince and leader of all security and intelligence, had personally approved the operation to capture or kill the journalist.
So the optics are just. They're impossible to ignore. The U.S. president was actively, publicly, defending a foreign leader against the explicit findings of his own country's intelligence agencies.
And it didn't even stop there. He wasn't done. The reporter pressed on, asking about documented conflicts of interest, the business ties between Saudi entities and the ruling family.
And the response was to chastise her.
To chastise the reporter, he told her she didn't have to embarrass our guest.
That moment right there, that completed the whole reputational exchange. MBS was no longer an international pariah. He was now an esteemed guest who had to be protected from, tough questions.
For his part, MBS handled it pretty smoothly. He gave this measured deflection.
Right. He called the killing a huge mistake and said it was really painful to hear that anyone losing his life for no real purpose.
And then he immediately pivoted. He started touting improved Saudi systems, basically implying the whole thing was some kind of, procedural error, not a malicious decision from the very top.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or nothing illegal way. And it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc. in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
The significance of that exchange, you really can't overstate it. It was a green light to the world and, crucially, to international investors that MBS was back
in business, fully rehabilitated, and that the Khashoggi murder was now officially a closed case in the eyes of the world's superpower.
And that diplomatic shield was the absolute prerequisite to unlocking the financial commitments that were about to be announced.
Which brings us directly to the astronomical figures that gave MBS all this leverage in the first place. We're moving from the cost of immunity to the actual currency that was used to buy it.
And this is where the numbers just start to get, they defy belief.
Yeah, the headline figure announced by the Crown Prince was an expansion from an already massive pledge of $600 billion to nearly $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion flowing into the U.S. economy.
It's a number that's just designed to short-circuit any critical thought. It's so big, it's a political statement as much as it is an economic one.
He announced this to get attention, to get respect, to get favorable policy decisions, and to get them immediately.
But as economists and analysts very quickly pointed out, a number of that scale demands some pretty deep skepticism.
Let's put it in perspective for a second. How believable is $1 trillion, really?
Well, think about this. $1 trillion is almost the same as Saudi Arabia's entire annual economic output. Their GDP in 2023 was reported at about $1.07 trillion.
So it's like them promising to give their entire economy's worth of output for a whole year to a single foreign country. It seems unimaginable.
It's an astronomical promise. And this is where the professional economists, they pump the brakes. Experts like Paul Donovan, a chief economist, warned pretty explicitly that these kinds of pledges may not therefore be honored in the near term.
And they often lack any real enforcement mechanism, right? It's not like a standard government contract.
Exactly. These massive headline figures, they do their job on the day they're announced. They generate goodwill. They get favorable media coverage. And it almost doesn't matter whether the money ever fully shows up.
And we have a track record here. There's historical evidence to back up that skepticism, which the sources get into.
Oh, absolutely.
Think back to the first Trump administration. There was all this talk about $450 billion in Saudi investments. That was the big number then.
I remember it well. And what actually materialized, a hard analysis showed that between 2017 and 2020, only about $92 billion in exports were actually realized.
And that $92 billion, that even includes existing trade, right? It's not all new investment.
Precisely. So the gap between the promised $450 billion and the actual measurable economic activity was enormous.
It's the same story with that famous $110 billion defense deal from 2017.
Yes. Of that $110 billion, Congress was only formally notified of about $23 billion in possible arms sales during that period. The fulfillment rate on these mega pledges is just historically very low.
Okay, so if the actual cash delivered is likely to be just a fraction of that nearly $1 trillion number, where is the money supposed to be going? Why are these specific areas so strategically important?
Well, the scope is really designed to hit America's most strategically sensitive sectors. The promise is that this near trillion will flow into several key areas, basically setting up Saudi Arabia as a key partner in America's future industrial and technological dominance.
Let's start with tech. The sources highlight a multi-billion-dollar investment in AI infrastructure. That's huge.
It is massive. And it speaks directly to MBS's own Vision 2030 project, which is all about diversifying the Saudi economy away from oil.
So by positioning themselves as major capital providers for US AI, they get what? Early access to the best tech and talent.
That's a huge part of it. And for the U.S., these billions offer really crucial funding at a time of intense global competition, making sure American companies, not Chinese or European ones, are the ones getting that capital.
Okay, then there's the civil nuclear energy cooperation. This has been a really thorny issue for decades because of proliferation concerns.
Correct. And this visit established the legal foundation for a multi-billion-dollar civil nuclear partnership. The key phrase you see in the documents is positioning American companies as partners of choice, consistent with strong non-proliferation standards.
That's a massive policy win for Saudi Arabia. It signals that the U.S. trusts them enough to cooperate on really sensitive nuclear tech, even if it is just for energy.
It gives them a level of scientific and technical credibility they've wanted for a long time.
And what about the critical minerals framework? This seems to speak directly to all the supply chain anxiety we've seen since the pandemic.
Absolutely. This framework is all about aligning U.S. and Saudi strategies to diversify supply chains away from dependency on geopolitical rivals.
Specifically China.
Specifically China, which currently dominates the processing and supply of so many of these minerals that are essential for everything from EV batteries to advanced defense technology.
So Saudi Arabia offers capital and, I guess, strategic locations for processing and storage?
Exactly. You have to understand, these investments aren't just, writing a check. They are structural commitments that are designed to entwine the U.S. and Saudi economies for decades to come.
And, of course, the pledges also go into defense, global infrastructure, and the really visible stuff like U.S. sports industries.
Yeah, where Saudi investment has just completely altered the landscape. Whether it's Levy's golf or major team sponsorships, their financial influence is touching every part of American life.
The sheer breadth of the pledge means that basically every lobbying group, every major industry head, every politician, they all stand to gain from this relationship.
It creates this vast, self-sustaining lobby right inside the U.S. that will almost always argue in favor of accommodating Saudi interests, regardless of any human rights concerns.
And that takes us from the public economic leverage straight into the private personal financial stakes. This is really the core of the corruption thesis we're exploring, how public policy might be driven by massive private financial gain.
This intersection of policy and personal finance is just critical to understanding the whole dynamic. The sources really highlight the significant financial entanglements of the U.S. ruling family with Saudi entities.
So the flow of capital wasn't just aimed at the U.S. economy in general.
No, it was specifically targeted at entities that are tied directly to power.
So let's look at the Trump Organization projects in Saudi Arabia. We're talking about active, visible plans, Trump towers in both Jeddah and Riyadh.
And the planned Trump Plaza in Jeddah, which the marketing materials describe as having Manhattan-style vibrancy. These are not abstract deals. They are real bricks-and-mortar projects being built under the Trump brand.
And the key partner here, according to the sources, is a company called Dar Global.
Right, a major Saudi company with very close ties to the royal family. And here we can actually track the concrete cash flow, which proves the personal financial leverage.
Okay, so what did the financial disclosures show?
They reveal that Dar Global pumped over $20 million into the Trump Organization in licensing fees just last year alone.
$20 million. And can you break down the mechanism? The sources mention that more than $15 million of that went into a specific Delaware-based company, DT Marks KSA.
Right, DT Marks Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That's a key structural detail. A Delaware LLC like that is often used for operational efficiency and sometimes for opacity. It lets foreign payments related to a U.S. brand flow into an American company that's dedicated specifically to the Saudi market.
So the significance is that this is measurable, verifiable money, $15+ million flowing directly from a Saudi-linked developer into the private business of the individual whose family member is sitting in the Oval Office making these deals.
It creates an absolutely irrefutable conflict of interest. The family business stands to gain tens of millions of dollars from the very man being celebrated on the red carpet.
And the entanglement goes even deeper. You have figures like Jared Kushner, a former senior administration official,
whose private equity firm, Affinity Partners, secured a reported $2 billion investment from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund.
And that fund is directly controlled by MBS.
Directly. This huge injection of capital into the firm of a close family member and political advisor just shows the strategic use of investment capital to cultivate favor and influence at the absolute highest levels of U.S. power.
So when a reporter asks about these conflicts of interest and the president insists, I have nothing to do with the family business, and claims they've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually.
That statement just stands in stark contrast to the documented reality. The active projects, the Manhattan-style vibrancy marketing, and the confirmed $20 million cash flow from Dar Global.
The contrast couldn't be sharper. The public narrative tries to dismiss the conflict, but the financial documents tell a very, very different story.
A story of deep personal financial reliance on Saudi capital.
And the power of that capital wasn't just limited to the ruling family. The White House visit itself became a sort of an inflection point for all of corporate America and the global elites who are seeking Saudi funds.
Oh, absolutely. That star-studded black-tie dinner honoring MBS was so critical. It wasn't just a government function. It was a global signaling event.
Look at the guest list. It's just staggering. Billionaire Elon Musk, Apple CEO Tim Cook,
Fox News anchor Maria Bartiromo, golf star Bryson DeChambeau, and even the soccer icon Cristiano Ronaldo, who is currently playing in the Saudi Pro League.
What message does the presence of titans like Musk and Cook send? A cross-section of global power like that.
It sends the message that MBS is the essential gatekeeper to vast, virtually limitless pools of capital. Capital that every major tech company, every financial institution, every global brand needs for expansion.
So their presence was a tacit approval.
It was. By attending and fitting the Crown Prince, they normalized his position. They showed the world that the pursuit of billions trumps any lingering concerns about accountability for past actions. The financial elite becomes a powerful internal lobby to just maintain the status quo.
So this political accommodation, bought with the promise of all this investment, then translated into hard military policy shifts. These were the deliverables that MBS secured, and they gave him two enormous strategic victories that really reshaped the balance of power in the Middle East.
Let's start with the official political status. During that same dinner, the designation of Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, or MNNA, was announced. The president called it something that is very important to them.
Okay, so for the listener, what does MNNA status actually do? It's a huge status victory, but what are the tangible military benefits?
It's a significant elevation. Now, it does not provide the full security guarantee of a NATO Article 5 defense pact. The U.S. isn't automatically obligated to defend Saudi Arabia if they're attacked, but it grants them expedited logistical and military cooperation. It means Saudi Arabia gets quicker, less regulated access to U.S. military hardware, to loans, to training, and to sales. And crucially, it facilitates much deeper intelligence sharing and strategic coordination.
So it basically positions them as a critical U.S. security partner, right alongside 20 other nations, including countries like Israel and South Korea. It affirms a deep strategic trust.
Precisely. And that newfound trust was immediately leveraged to secure the truly game-changing deliverable, the approval of the F-35 sale.
This is the move. This is the one that fundamentally overturns decades of U.S. regional policy.
And it's one of the clearest examples of a policy decision being bought with financial leverage.
The F-35 is, of course, the U.S.'s most advanced multi-role stealth fighter jet. Saudi Arabia reportedly wanted up to 48 of them, a deal valued at, potentially between $5.3 and $5.7 billion.
A massive deal. And until this point, Israel had maintained a complete monopoly on operating the F-25 in the Middle East, going all the way back to 2016.
And that monopoly isn't just, a political preference. It's protected by U.S. federal law. The mandate that requires Israel to maintain its qualitative military edge, or QME.
The QME. It's a foundational policy that says Israel must be able to defeat any combination of regional military threats. Selling F-35s to Saudi Arabia directly challenges that, and it raised immediate serious opposition.
And yet the president just dismissed those QME concerns entirely. The sources note his clear position was that both KSA and Israel are great allies, and they both deserve the top-of-the-line jets.
He explicitly rejected the idea that Saudi Arabia should get, in his words, planes of reduced caliber.
So he was signaling directly to MBS that he wouldn't let U.S. law get in the way of a major arms sale and the cash flow that comes with it.
And the internal reaction, as you can imagine, was fierce. The Israeli Defense Forces reportedly sent a formal position paper objecting to the sale, warning that this transaction would inevitably erode Israel's air superiority.
And beyond the regional power balance, this deal also brought up some very serious security risks tied to the F-35's sensitive technology.
This is a critical technical point that we can't just gloss over. The F-35 isn't just a plane, it's a network system. Its most sensitive asset is its mission data files.
Okay, what are those?
Think of them as the plain secret sauce, a comprehensive classified database with all the intelligence on hostile air defense systems, radar signatures, combat info, and all the proprietary stealth techniques.
And the risk pathway here is what? That Saudi Arabia operates Chinese-made air defense systems.
And crucially, hosts Chinese technicians to service and maintain those systems. Exactly. The presence of Chinese technicians operating near or even within the technical proximity of these highly sensitive U.S. defense assets creates what analysts called an unacceptable vulnerability pathway.
So the fear is that the F-35's stealth tech and those mission data files could be compromised and leaked directly to China, giving Beijing an unparalleled look into U.S. stealth capability.
And this concern isn't just hypothetical. It's the exact reason Turkey was kicked out of the F-35 program back in 2019.
Right. They bought the Russian S-400 air defense system.
And the U.S. feared the S-400's radar could harvest data on the F-35's stealth features, compromising the entire fleet. Now, the U.S. accepted a parallel risk with Chinese systems in Saudi Arabia, apparently in exchange for goodwill and cash flow.
And what many analysts argue was the strategic blunder here was decoupling this massive military concession from any other major regional demand.
Right. Washington should have maintained its leverage. It should have demanded normalization with Israel before approving the F-35 deal. That was the carrot.
But the administration approved the sale first.
Which means MBS got everything he wanted. He secured top-tier U.S. military technology and MNNA status without having to give an inch on Palestinian statehood or formal recognition of Israel.
The Saudis just explicitly maintained their position that any normalization depended on a clear path to a two-state solution.
So MBS paid the price, the trillion-dollar pledge, and continued basing rights for the U.S. military. And he received MNNA status and the F-35. He achieved his goals entirely on his terms.
Which brings us to the synthesis, the ultimate takeaway of our deep dive. Connecting all these dots to see how MBS's financial leverage translated directly into substantive, irreversible policy concessions for Saudi Arabia, all despite the Khashoggi murder and the obvious conflicts of interest.
If you zoom out, the sources overwhelmingly support the thesis that financial influence allowed a smaller state, a very wealthy one, but still a smaller state, to dictate terms to the superpower.
MBS secured MNNA status, the F-35 sale, which shattered the QME monopoly and access to civil nuclear cooperation. And he got his political rehabilitation at the same time.
The White House focus, from that first comment in the Oval Office about Khashoggi to the repeated talk of deals and investment, it consistently showed that transactional politics were the absolute priority.
And this created undeniable leverage for Riyadh.
The calculus for Washington seems to have been driven by two things. First, those deep personal financial interests tied up in Saudi investment funds and development projects. And second, the geopolitical necessity to keep those investment pledges flowing and, critically, to stop Saudi Arabia from shifting its main defense partnership to a competitor like China or Russia.
The sources cite analysts who view this whole approach as extremely short-sighted. They argue that by prioritizing flattery and deals over things like civil liberties and QME constraints, the U.S. is effectively squandering the status-based leverage it has over its security partners.
The long-term cost is the erosion of American moral and policy consistency. MBS achieved his primary goal. He secured elevated global status, he maintained substantive independence from the U.S., and he leveraged his economic power to bypass consequences for past crimes and secure massive strategic gains.
He walked into the White House as a pariah, and he left as a critical, honored partner with F-35s on the way.
It's truly the ultimate example of how immense wealth can swiftly reshape geopolitical realities. It provides a clear route to impunity and elevated status on the world stage.
The entire sequence, the casual dismissal of a state-sanctioned murder, the documented private cash flows to the ruling family, and the unprecedented military concessions, it just paints a really stark picture of policy being dictated by capital.
The transactional nature of this relationship is just undeniable now. Saudi Arabia got major security status, top-tier military hardware that disrupts the entire regional balance of power, and personal political rehabilitation.
And the U.S. secured a headline-grabbing, though, likely unfulfilled investment pledge, and reaffirmed its role as Riyadh's primary, if very costly, security partner.
But the integrity of American foreign policy, the established human rights standards, and the mandate to uphold regional stability measures like QME, they were all casualties in that transaction.
This raises a really important and, I think, provocative question for you, the listener, to think about as you process all of this.
If one country can secure immunity from international accountability, receive a white-glove diplomatic welcome, and gain access to the most advanced U.S. military technology simply by leveraging a nearly trillion-dollar investment pledge and strategically courting powerful business leaders. From Silicon Valley CEOs to global sports stars, what ethical guardrails are even left in modern transactional global politics?
And how easily can the knowledge of severe human rights abuses be just dismissed when such vast sums of capital are on the table? That is the core conflict of the financialized world we are all navigating today. It's a deep dive that gives you a shortcut to understanding the true price of immunity.
So here's the question. Can you put a price tag on human rights? Because apparently, the answer is $1 trillion. What do you think? If you enjoyed this, please like the video. If you didn't, please hit the dislike button and leave a comment below with your thoughts.